Hello and welcome to our video contemplation of day signature 67. This frequency corresponds to the Seven of Hearts, the prime instinct to imagine, and the heart virtue of amazement. It is represented by the Angels of Nobility and creation.
Mm-hmm. We have the 45th Angel of Nobility, who walks the pathway of ownership to become the embodiment of the king. And then we have the third angel of creation, who walks the pathway of play to become the embodiment of innocence.
Mm-hmm. So right out the gate, when we begin with the Seven of Hearts, we find a repeated word.
Mm-hmm.
Right at the very beginning of all this, what are the keynotes for the Seven?
The keynotes for the Seven are wisdom and innocence.
Wisdom and innocence.
Mm-hmm.
We're working with an angel that becomes ultimately the embodiment of innocence. So immediately we know that innocence is a primary theme here.
Mm-hmm.
Innocence is something we'll return to.
Definitely. And also, interestingly, the embodiment of the king, we have the kings as figures in the Liberated Tarot, and we have keynotes for each of those figures as well.
Mm-hmm.
Our main keynote for the king is wisdom.
Oh, yeah.
So we're seeing multiple times over these repeated themes.
In this case, quite unexpectedly, through the angels, and in both cases, the embodiment level of that angel story. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah.
Whatever we're finding in wisdom and innocence will be something directly rooted in the body of our experience. These are not intellectual concerns. They're something practical that we live out.
Yeah. I also see this really interesting, almost like apparently opposing themes. So with the Seven, you have wisdom and innocence, which sounds like somebody who's elderly who has gained wisdom, and then maybe somebody who's childlike who has innocence. It's like these two apparently opposing themes. And you also see that exact same thing with the angels.
Wow, it's true.
The king, who is the embodiment of wisdom, and then again the angel with the embodiment of innocence. It's really almost like wanting to drive the point home that not only is this the perfect place to find these two angels paired, but they're definitely trying to point at something here, and we're going to unpack that. That
is so cool, that appearance of opposites.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we're going to find they are not opposite. They are balancing aspects of one story, and they work together to communicate something authentic.
Yeah.
Authenticity, is that right?
Yep.
Authenticity is a direct match to the frequency of 67.
Mm-hmm.
So we're on to something here. Another one that we see play out is in the pathways. We have the pathway of ownership in the king, which is so serious and so intentional. And then we have the pathway of play in the third angel.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems opposed.
Right.
It's not.
Mm-mm.
We're going to learn why it isn't. But at first glance, there's this like dichotomy of themes playing out all at once. And I can't say we've noticed anything quite so overtly polarized.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty cool. Okay, so let's dig in and unpack what we're noticing.
Okay.
We've already talked about the Seven. We now remind ourselves that the placement here is in the virtue of hearts.
Mm-hmm.
We're working with the heart virtue of amazement and the prime instinct to imagine.
Mm-hmm.
The prime instinct, of course, is right on theme. It feels like it's been almost a week now of daily returning to this theme of the imagination, the function of the imagination, and the proper use of that capacity in each of us. So the fact that we return again to this prime instinct to imagine, of course, is going to play in to what we find here. Pretty easy connection to the third angel of creation on the pathway of play to become the embodiment of innocence. You can sense how imagination contributes to the pathway of play and is in fact fundamental to play itself, the idea of play itself. So I love finding that here. I'm sure that's going to get woven in. And this heart virtue of amazement. So you noted something earlier based on our virtual oracle. We might as well share that right now because it seems so so perfect.
Yes. Yeah, so every morning we pull our virtual oracle spread, and the tarot card, the Liberated Tarot card that we got this morning was the Four of Swords, which is actually the sword virtue of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And in this sequence, the swords are the first suit, so we encounter this awareness first.
A mental awareness, because the swords are about this mental power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. So we're now in the hearts, and as we know, as we're moving through the sequence, we've been talking about this for days as well, this unification of the mind and the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And what I kind of see in this word amazement is a form of awareness, but that awareness is like this heart octave of awareness. It's like the next level of awareness that is not only understanding, like when you're aware of something, you have a new level of understanding, you can almost relax, but this is to such an extent that you can't help but be totally amazed by what you've just understood to be true.
Yeah, I get that. It makes perfect sense to me. It's like when a light shines on something, the mind says, oh, I can see that now. Mm-hmm. But it's the heart that says, oh, wow, how cool. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow, I love that.
Yeah.
The heart engages the being in a way that the mind cannot. But the two have to work together because you have to first become aware of something in order to respond to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's very interesting.
One of the frequency matches for today is also the phrase deep truth. So it's like, yes, you can understand something intellectually, but the deep truths really resonate at this like deeper heart level where your whole being understands.
Big.
What?
That's so good. It's true. Mm-hmm. We are not meant to interact with truth intellectually only. Yeah. We've said this before, but none of this is playing out in a mental vacuum. It's meant to tap something deep within us and ultimately awaken something natural within us. Reawakening is another perfect match to this day's frequency of 67. Pure nature, authenticity. There are these hints at what it is that we're awakening, and none of it is solely mental.
No.
Again, we always make a point to say this, but we are in no way minimizing the significance of mind. We are placing it within a holistic context that includes it, that depends upon it, but not solely. So it's just so amazing to me when we put all of this together, or when we discovered how it went together, we had no idea how perfectly placed all of these different elements were. We were not thinking in terms of a developmental sequence moving from swords to wands to hearts to diamonds. All this time in, we're only getting a sense that that might have been the case, and finding day after day that, oh my goodness, it is in fact the case.
Yeah.
Well, there's your heart virtue of amazement. You know, the mind can go so far and it can be so smart, but there's a deeper wisdom inherent to the knowledge of the heart that the mind only later catches up to.
Yeah. Yeah. The amplified frequency for today is 670. That's when you add a 0 to the frequency of the day. And we have one entry at this frequency, and it's very perfect, I think, to read right now because
Let's hear it.
You understand what we're getting at. So the phrase is, underlying every act, experience, and moment of our lives is something absolutely stable and receptive, dependable, intelligent, and true.
Wow.
So there is this underlying intelligence that is very, very smart, and we're able to witness it unfold and be amazed by it.
And it's stable.
Absolutely.
And it's dependable.
That's
and
part of the
true.
amazement of man, this whole time I've not only been taken care of, but everything is turning out for the best. And every action, every experience I've ever had has completely been redeemed.
Wow.
On and on and on.
Okay. So this is cool. What we're leading up to, unknowingly, but apparently in this, is the very foundation of innocence.
Yeah.
The only way any of us could possibly access any version of innocence is if that line you just read were in fact totally true. So what we have here is a developmental process. one that is fairly clearly represented by the day. You can think of a young child. A very young child will be completely innocent. And they have the space and the opportunity to be innocent because their environment supports it. They have nothing to fear. Mm-hmm. So they play. And they are creative to an extent that we are incapable of duplicating as adults. There's something very specific and very unique that happens at that age in the innocence of a child. Mm-hmm. And that innocence, again, is possible because of the supportive environment that holds that child, that provides food for that child, that permits that child to not have to worry about paying bills, all of these things. Mm-hmm. But of course, as we know, the child grows up. And as the child becomes an adult, it's taken on all sorts of narratives that convince it that it is no longer safe to be innocent. The time for play is over. It's time to get serious. It's time to work hard. It's time to develop ambition. It's time to make some money, have a family, get a job, all these sort of things, and then eventually expire.
Yeah, it's time to mature.
It's time to mature. Well, the developmental sequence is necessary here. Mm-hmm. It's a part of this process of maturation, and I'm looking down at the word. You've written the word maturation.
Yes.
Is that a match?
It's an exact match to the day.
Okay, so amazing. Mm-hmm. So this idea of development is woven into the very day signature itself. Mm-hmm. For many, the story ends here. Right. They arrive at this point of adulthood. I'm putting that in quotation marks because this is not the true adulthood. This is a faux adulthood, false or surface level adulthood, initial adulthood. Mm-hmm. In the same way we could think of the childlike nature of the child as an initial innocence. But there's more to be developed, and something we've learned in this sequence, something most of us know at this point, is that experience lends to the development of wisdom if we're paying attention. Mm-hmm. So with awareness comes the capacity to move through life in a way that develops wisdom over time. And the interesting thing about wisdom is that true wisdom is inherently innocent all over again. The images of like the aged monk or master with the long white beard and the eyes that just look like bright and young and curious like a child's. And you know that there's so much wisdom in this elderly being, all of which was born of direct experience, and yet somehow all of which produced this gentleness, this kindness, this playfulness. That's the true guru. That's the true master. The image of true wisdom is childlike. It's innocent. But this innocence is an octave level up.
Yeah.
This innocence is an octave level up because it is no longer dependent upon the environmental factors of mom and dad and family and community. It's now rooted in something much more sustainable, something much more impressive, and something much more necessary, which is life itself. The wise person has developed through experience to a point of understanding that their support system is not a function of other people or a job or these visible environmental factors, but rather a direct result of life itself. Mm-hmm. That's the true wisdom, and it's what produces true, capital I, innocence. And this is the embodiment of innocence that the angel is referring to. The version of play the angel is referring to is not just playing with Legos. This isn't childish, but it is childlike, because what would it be like to meet your life with that same degree of creativity and intrigue and excitement that any child meets a pile of Legos with? Mm-hmm. We're bringing all of these initially innocent factors into an adult life. And what that allows us to do is slough off all of the worries and the concerns and the seriousness and the hard work that we were tricked into thinking was necessary as an adult. And the initial adult matures into an actual adult. Mm-hmm. And there is a development of true wisdom and the sustaining capital I innocence, rooted not in other people, not in other things, not in employment,
right,
but in life itself. we come to know that the ultimate environment is equally set to our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's the hero's journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's at this stage where we've learned how to use the guidance of the heart as that true guiding light. Mm-hmm. Not all of these external things that we've become to depend upon. We've now learned that the heart is really the true source of guidance, mm-hmm. and that we can absolutely trust it and listen to it, follow that pathway of highest excitement, and then all of a sudden, all of these options open up to you. Things that seemed childish are actually the authentic excitement that you're meant to follow, mm-hmm. and don't discount anything. Nothing can be ruled out simply based on that sort of appearance of being insignificant. It's actually the most significant if you feel it deep within your heart that it's lighting you up or exciting you in some way. It's the ultimate, true guidance.
That is really well said. And there is a way that everything we find here now as adults with this awareness does necessarily connect back to our individual childhoods. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In every case it will. Because that awareness is a part of you. It always has been. And it was permitted, at least for a short window of time, to reveal itself at that very young age because it was safe to. And this is true for most of us. I realize that all of us have a different life set on a different stage. But for the most part, the experience plays out in this way. I know that the sort of work that we're involved in right now directly connects to things that I was naturally interested in as a child. Things which I didn't understand then. I just knew that I enjoyed them. Even down to mystical studies, even down to mythology and all of these sort of things that seem pretty random. Mm-hmm. All of these things which, as an adult, never qualify as answers to the question of what am I going to be when I grow up or how am I going to make a living. Mm-hmm. They don't connect from the perspective of that initial adult or early adult. It's not until we learn that our life is trustworthy enough to produce something original, something viable, something meaningful, something sustaining, something fulfilling through all of these natural tendencies and preferences. It's not until we recognize that idea as possible, as valid, and then live into it, that we begin to prove to ourselves that we're not responsible for making life work. Life works, and we're responsible for remembering that. Mm-hmm. That's what wisdom does. Wisdom experiences the alternative to innocence so completely that it ultimately disqualifies all of that heavy effort, hard work, production of ambition, all of these like manufacturing of like energy.
Yeah, like willpower.
It's like
effort.
It's effort in the end.
Yeah, it's effort.
Experience eventually exhausts us, is what I'm trying to say. Mm-hmm. And if we're paying attention, we recognize that to be a clear signal that this particular avenue is no longer fruitful. And so we adjust course and we explore alternatives until we arrive at something more meaningful, mm-hmm. more fulfilling, and
more efficient.
Absolutely more efficient. Mm-hmm. Yeah. If we're super lucky, we find that. If we're super intent, we find that. And I think this is how all of this talk of innocence and playfulness directly connects to its apparent opposite in the pathway of this Angel of Nobility, the pathway of ownership. We have to take ownership for what's happening. Mm-hmm. We have to become willing to explore other avenues, and we have to have enough awareness to know better than to compromise, to know better than to settle. Mm-hmm. That's what the awareness produces. If we know that there is such a thing as goodness supporting the entire experience, if we know that the story is leading to a culminating end that is in fact fulfilling, that is not in fact an end at all, but rather the beginning of a whole new story we were meant to live, if we know that we each get to have it all, and that all adapts itself to each of us as individuals. If we know these things enough to take them personally and to start to seek them, take ownership of our own story, we then become involved or engaged on the hero's journey. Hero's journey is a match to today's frequency, in fact.
And so is I am here to play.
Awesome. So the interesting thing about the hero's journey is you have this villager who strikes out on an epic adventure. The villager is no longer comfortable in the village. This is our child. The child is no longer a child. It's time to grow up. It's time to grow beyond that family unit, beyond that village, whatever the case may be. The village could be a family unit. The village could be a job. The village could be an idea. This cycle of the hero's journey plays out many, many times in our lives on every subject of our experience. But essentially, we move away from what is known into what is unknown, and we tend to encounter a lot of challenge and obstacle and opportunity in that wilderness of the unknown. We are learning to demonstrate our own strength. We are learning to tap our own awareness, and most of all, we're learning to remember our direct relationship to life. Inevitably, in the hero's journey, you watch any movie, you watch or read any kind of epic narrative whatsoever, you're going to find that the original character who left home finds his or her way back home at the end. And that's innocence, the initial innocence, moving out into this adult territory of hard work, ultimately to remember that it is not only as supported as it once was, it's more supported than it ever knew it was. And as a result of this, all of that hard work is not only released, but redeemed, because it's understood now that the wilderness period was needed in order to develop the wisdom to root that knowing in something real and produce this true and sustaining innocence that we find here in the embodiment. It's an awesome story. It's the same story that we read about in the book of Genesis as the originally innocent Adam and Eve are kicked out of the Garden of Eden, and only to rediscover paradise in the end. It's the same thing we find in the story of the prodigal son, who has it all at home and goes out and squanders it all only to return home on his knees. And how does the father respond to this prodigal son? The father says, "You made it. You're home. Let's celebrate." Not "You're right. You're a piece of shit." No, he says, "I'm glad you're home. Let's go celebrate."
Yeah, another frequency match to today is reclaiming home.
See,
Reclaiming
this is awesome.
home.
That gives me the chills.
And reconnection as well.
Good eye, babe. So there's a story we're telling here through many different angles, but that story is all of our story. All of us live that story. And all of us live that story on the subject of our relationships, which includes family and also partners and friends. It is played out on every subject of our experience, including career, including finances. We find over and over again that we're given opportunity in this wilderness of the unknown to remember that we are cared for, we are safe, it is okay, it's going to be okay. You said something earlier that it's like the summary of the day is all is well. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but just intuitively agree.
Yeah. And this has to be the greatest revelation of all time. I mean, truly, when we really let it sink in that every action is redeemed, every pain point of guilt, shame, blame, totally erased. All is well. All has been this whole time. And actually, the word revelation is another frequency match to 67.
Oh my word.
But we have to truly have this revelation and be in this state of amazement. It's really the destiny of every single human to reach this point. But yeah, there's really no substitute for that authentic experience of it. And I think, you and I have experienced it on some level, but it's one of those things that it never ends. It just keeps unfolding in new octaves each day that you're willing to meet that understanding. You're willing to meet that meet life with that sense of wonder. Another frequency match to the day is thank you, I love you.
Oh,
which
man.
is the prayer of amazement. But
yes.
that, and we've obviously talked about that at length many times before now, but we're actually seeing it here as a perfect frequency match to today.
Yes. And that's exactly what innocence would say.
Mm-hmm.
Just thank you. I love you. This is awesome. I love this.
Yeah.
It is mind-boggling to me that here in the heart virtue of amazement, we would find the prayer of amazement itself. Thank you. I love you. I don't remember noticing that when we discovered this theme of amazement in this position, but of course it is.
Yeah.
We're learning, we've talked about this before, we're learning how to become a living prayer. We're learning how to live out or live in the prayer of amazement, to move through life in this energy of thank you, I love you. What's interesting to me when I look at the 45th Angel of Nobility is just how perfect of a metaphor these words are.
Mm-hmm.
Historically, nobility is not something you earn, it's something you're born into.
Right.
Which means it's inherent, which means it's in your blood. It's a part of you.
Yeah.
There's no getting away from it.
Mm-hmm.
You might want to be Aladdin, but you're the prince.
Yeah.
Like there's no living on the streets for you. You can play out the prodigal son story if you wish, but inevitably you're going to return to what? Your throne, the kingdom. Each of us is born into the inheritance or the birthright of that kingdom.
Wow.
Yeah, I've never seen that before.
No, me either, but that's amazing.
It's so cool.
It's perfect.
Yep. So it's built in.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
It's built in. Our responsibility is to recognize that, to take ownership of our place, of our role, of our relationship to that kingdom, to life itself. And this is what ultimately produces the embodiment of the king. Again, in this case, the king is a metaphorical placeholder. It's an archetype. It's about standing tall, standing up into the sovereign expression of your role. It's what it means to become yourself without hesitation, without apology.
Mm-hmm.
This is the removal of all doubt, the removal of all fear, and the clear recognition that everything you need, you have. Mm-hmm. It's all there. The kingdom is yours. So this is the very thing, of course, in all of its seriousness of ownership and seriousness of kingliness and all of that nobility, which, again, the metaphor plays out in such a way that there's a lot of pomp and circumstance and expectation built into that. All of this is purged from the story we're telling here, and you're left with the promise of a kingdom, the opportunity to rise up, to take ownership of that kingdom on purpose, and knowing that everything that happens for you, knowing that the kingdom is already yours and you don't have to earn it. You now have the space to become a true creator, and that's where we meet this third angel of creation. This is the ultimate expression of creation, the original expression of yourself, which is the very thing you've stood up into as the king. Mm-hmm. The pathway here is play. Amazing that taking ownership permits play. We've been taught to work so hard. We hear ownership and we think, okay, this is now the next thing I'm going to earn. I'm going to earn the kingdom. And the thing is, there is no earning a gift that has been given, a grace that is a part of who you are, a part of your birthright. So you're left with one true act. Yeah. It's the original act of self-expression through play, through enjoyment. Mm-hmm. That's why the angels bring us back to this over and over again. Play, in this case, is simply the expression of your own authentic heart. Mm-hmm. It looks different for everyone.
Absolutely.
Play for one person is laying brick. They love nothing more. Play for another person is mathematics on a chalkboard. And 99.9% of other people are not going to understand how that mess of figures equals play for that person, but they don't need to. That's for Albert Einstein to understand. Mm-hmm. And this is our play.
Yes.
This is nerdy stuff. Mm-hmm. Let's be real. This is not going to be the same for others. It's not going to be equal to play for others. The things that we pour over all day, every day for the fun of it will require work and concentration for others. It's just not meant for everyone. But something is meant for each of us, and our role, our responsibility, our opportunity is to take ownership of whatever that is, plug ourselves into it, and allow our version of that play to become the full reclamation of our personal kingdom.
Yes. Wow.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
I can't help but see that the third angel employs the imagination in the exact way that we've been describing now for days.
Mm-hmm.
It knows that everything that happens for it. It knows that life is only good. It knows that there is nothing to fear. It knows that everything it doesn't yet understand or have is coming.
Yep.
It's only a matter of time. And that when it comes, it'll be a complete surprise and better than it could have imagined. And so it begins to utilize its imagination in a distinctly positive direction. It orients toward beauty and allows that beauty to come into it. You know, it's the very thing we've talked about. It assumes the best.
Yeah. I mean, so much of our mental capacity is freed up when we truly own total, absolute faith in the good. Mm-hmm. And it's just free to create in beautiful ways. Yes. All that worry, all that concern is gone. So there's just room for it.
There's this beautiful part of the New Testament, and I think the story is told in a couple of the Gospels, where Jesus is talking to a crowd, and he's talking to them about the birds of the air and the lilies of the field. And he's saying, look at these animals, look at these plants. They're not worried about what they will wear or whether they will have clothes to wear. They're not worried about where food will come from. They know that food will be there when they're hungry, and they know that they are dressed in clothing more beautiful than the richest man who ever existed ever owned. You know, that flower is adorned more beautifully than Solomon himself, is more or less what Jesus said. He said, if this is true of flowers and birds, how much more true do you think this will be of you, the very apple of your Father's eye? You know, a child of God, so to speak. Mm-hmm. The reason that an actual human child is capable of such vast creative movement, such an accelerated rate of learning, is because that child is not worrying over whether or not it will eat tonight. It's not worried over any of the things we as adults feel that we need to be worried over. So there is a great deal more space, as you said, for that brain, for that being to engage with its life creatively. This is a direct and specific use of imagination, which we now as adults must take ownership for reclaiming.
Yes.
We get to literally free up all the mental clutter that was poured into us in our developmental years and return again to this absolute knowing that there is nothing to worry over, that everything is cared for. The idea of assumption and assuming the best feels like some mental effort, but place yourself in the shoes of that small child. It is not trying not to worry about what it will eat later. It literally doesn't worry about it. It doesn't think about it. It doesn't compute as a distinct possibility that food might not be available for dinner tonight. Mm-hmm. It so completely assumes that it is free now to act in other ways and to give its energy and time and attention and thought life to other things. Mm-hmm. When we talk about using the imagination productively, when we talk about assuming the best, this is the level of complete knowing that we're talking about. This isn't manufactured knowing. This isn't an attempt to know. We're not trying to remember that everything's going to be okay. This might be true at first as we retrain these neurological pathways, which have become such like deep ruts in the direction of worry. But ultimately, what we're talking about in this embodiment of innocence is a complete release of worry, complete release of worry.
Yeah, and it's not just about survival. It's about everything in your past, including everything that you might worry about in the future.
Yeah, so I find it really interesting the way multiple times you've connected what we're seeing here to all of the life we've lived up until now. Mm-hmm. And I think it's significant. Maybe we need to hear a little more of what you're sensing, but it's like this idea that the life we've lived can be redeemed as a result of this innocent perspective.
Mm-hmm.
What is the connection you're sensing there?
Well, I mean, it's the connection between wisdom and innocence. That true wisdom is that we are innocent.
Dang. Okay. Yeah. And that we've been innocent all along the way, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that is extremely important.
That's what allows for this freeing up of our creative energy to move in the way it's meant to be moved. Like, there's
it is redemptive.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been speaking in developmental terms as if there's an initial innocence, a loss of innocence, and then a reclamation of innocence. This is just a way of talking about something that our minds can connect to sequentially. But we know in life, it's far more complex than that. This isn't a sequential movement. It's a holistic one. So what you're saying is extremely significant and more true than the developmental kind of metaphor we've been drafting. Every step along the way, amazingly enough, talk about amazement, every step along the way is not only perfectly innocent, but perfectly orchestrated. The angels have told us that every step is perfect, and that is the sort of thing that'll really twist up your brain a little bit unless you give it real time and get very honest with yourself. The fact of the matter is, each of us is doing the very best we can at any given time, regardless of the quality of our behavior, regardless of the quality of our words, regardless of the quality of our ideas. We're always living up to the heights of what we are capable of in that particular moment. We would not act at all unless we thought that we needed to act or should act or ought to act in this particular way.
Mm-hmm.
So this innocence is built into every single step. Mm-hmm. What we're actually learning to do is to relax into the memory of that innocence.
Yes.
We're not developing innocence. Mm-hmm. We're remembering that we are innocent.
Yes.
That is a very necessary refinement.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, this is the revelation of revelations.
Wow.
And I can't help but...
Well, I just got it. So.
Maybe. Well, I can't help but bring in what we're experiencing now to our conversation. But you did hint in earlier conversations that we would be speaking with the 11th angel.
Oh, yeah.
And I am reminded that the 11th angel, which I have not read the conversation, it's not complete yet, but I've been given hints. And one of the things that the 11th angel said that really struck me was that when referring to, I believe, evil, that it was a small misunderstanding.
Yeah, it refers to evil as a small misunderstanding. I like that.
And that really kind of, again, like rattles your brain a little to consider it from that perspective. But that's the angelic perspective. That's the highest perspective. And that's where we are finding ourselves here in this frequency of the day. Yeah,
I think you're right about that. And the way that it holds ownership and gentleness, ownership and innocence so completely and so simultaneously is fascinating and obvious. It's necessary. Mm-hmm. We are adults. We are conscious. We are invited to reclaim something, but it's more like a reclamation than it is like a development. Yeah. It's not anything that's ever been lost to us. It has become buried, so to speak, to our awareness until now. And so we begin to move differently in our present life and in our life moving forward. But a part of what you're getting at, which I think is very significant, is that it also extends backwards to redeem everything we've ever done, which releases all sense of guilt, any sense or idea that you might need to forgive yourself or others. There's never been any victimization. There's never actually been any harm done. Life itself is utterly impervious to damage. So what this means is that every act contributes to the story. Literally, mm-hmm. Every act contributes to the story, and every story leads to the same ultimate end, which is one of complete redemption, complete awareness, mm-hmm. complete innocence, and complete explosion into the larger life that you deserve.
One of the frequency matches, again, to today is invincibility.
Wow, that's...
what you were just describing.
It is. That's the right word.
Yeah.
Life itself is invincible. Wow.
Yeah.
That's The perfect word.
And I am powerful.
This is the ultimate power. This is what it means to be filled with invincibility.
Yeah.
We are powerful by virtue of our relationship to that which is invincible. And that's the kingdom. That's what we're born into. There's no escaping it. This is not a new metaphor for us. We've met this before in these day signatures. What's happening here today, to me, the way it feels in like my body is like this fortifying of myself in that ownership and this
fortification is another
what
one.
Oh, come on. Oh man, I'm just talking over here, but that's what it feels like. It feels like myself is fortified and given opportunity to stand so firm, so tall, so complete, and so unapologetically, like Timothy matters. And there's this like simultaneous softening of like all of the worry about whether I'm doing it right.
Yes.
So it's like I get to stand tall and breathe easy at the same time instead of like hold myself tall with like all this muscular tension and stuff.
Yeah.
This is a very generous and gracious day. That's what that's what it feels like to me.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So is there anything you would add? I mean,
I don't think so.
In a way, it's pretty straightforward. We're dealing with these apparent opposites. It feels like we're trying to like blend polarities, but it isn't. They're perfectly aligned, perfectly consistent, and each one contributes to the other in a pretty clear way. So what do we take away from this day? We take away, I would say, that you get to have it all. The kingdom is literally yours, and you actually can't get away from that fact. Nobility is built in. It's a part of you. There's nothing to earn. Everything is taken care of. All is well. And so you get to finally and completely relax. You get to breathe deep into your gut and trust that life can handle itself. And because of this awareness, you start to move through your life playfully, creatively, and thankfully. This prayer of amazement breathes out of you. It's a part of you. You move through life as a thank you, I love you, which blesses your life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to say thank you, I love you is to know that you have every permission. So, I mean, that would just be a natural thing that would bubble up out of you at that realization that you have every permission.
Yeah. We've broken this simple phrase down before. The first half of thank you is receptive. You recognize that you are supported. What more to say to any grace than just thank you? Wow.
Yeah.
That's the wow. That's receptive. And the I love you is the expressive. I love you is thank you for the permission to be myself. Now I will go and be myself. Now I'm going to start to play with those Legos. Now I'm going to trust that dinner will be ready when it's time for dinner. So that's what we get to live into. Thank you. I love you. I love this.
The prayer of amazement.
The prayer of amazement. Yeah. The heart virtue of amazement. It's a living thing. It's not a mental thing. It does involve your mind, but this is something we get to put roots down into. It's in our feet. So enjoy the embodiment of your nobility. Enjoy the understanding of your own innocence. Watch it connect its tendrils of grace and redemption to every act of your past. And watch what happens as you permit this. Watch how much lighter you begin to feel. And watch how much more space opens up in your own mind for the discovery of your version of things like this. Each of us is called to something special, but each of us must find what that is for ourselves. And this is a part of how we go about doing that. It's on the pathway of ownership and the pathway of play. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think all of us can handle that. We just need to choose to.
Yes.
So, okay. I love this one.
Yeah,
really
me too.
great.
It was amazing.
Great frequency, great day signature. I've never experienced anything quite like it before. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
You saw a lot of things that really kind of blew it open today.
Thanks.
And thank you for joining us as well. We'll look forward to seeing you again tomorrow for many more surprises, I am sure. In the meantime, have fun. Go play.
Mm-hmm.
Goodbye for now.
Bye.